Hi guys, welcome back to part 2 of this rollicking story about my first IVF journey when I attempted it with my own eggs. So, I started my IVF cycle, I'm doing injections every day at the exact same time. It's like a military operation, you have to be very precise about it. Now I'm lucky I'm not someone who's scared of needles, so that bit was fine for me. So I was doing them every night, continued with this cycle, and then on day 10, I drove up to Brisbane, which is a 2-hour drive north of me, and I got my scan, and the scan showed that I had actually created way more follicles than the doctor possibly expected of someone who was almost 47. I can't remember exactly how many it was, but it was a lot. So he was like, wow, this might actually work. So I'm thinking, wow, this might actually work. This is a miracle. I'm texting all my friends in my little baby village and telling them this is miraculous. I feel like my spirit of my mother is helping me and it's all happening. It was amazing. And everything was looking good. They told me to drive home, do my trigger shot, and then come back 2 days later and they were gonna do the egg retrieval surgery in Brisbane, 2 hours north of me. As I was leaving the clinic, the news came that they were about to close the border because this was the first week of COVID, remember? Nobody knew anything about this virus, but people were freaking out. This was the week when toilet paper was disappearing off the shelves across the whole country and around the world, and all the governments were going crazy and suddenly starting lockdowns. This was the week that I was doing this egg retrieval, and the government closed the border. And I was like, oh my God, how am I gonna get it back up to the clinic to do my egg retrieval? The border was closing on the night of my egg retrieval. So I drove home for 2 hours, I packed everything, I packed a week's worth of food, a week's worth of clothes, did my trigger shot, drove straight back up, pulling over and looking at Airbnbs. I'm pulling over and calling people because the thing is, to do an egg retrieval surgery, it's a general anesthetic, it's a proper operation, and you need someone to pick you up and look after you afterwards. And remember, I'm crossing state lines. None of my friends who live near me are allowed to cross because the border's closed. You know, my close friends or my ex-partner or colleagues or anyone who lives in this state, I couldn't ask them to come and do it. So I had to find someone up in Queensland, which is the other state across the border, to pick me up from the hospital and stay with me overnight in my Airbnb. So I'm trying to organize all this as I'm driving up because the next day it was all happening. So it was just like, honestly, I can't even describe the drama. And I'm someone who lives such a calm life, and I did manage to stay very calm, but there was this heightened feeling of, I've got to get this done, I've got to be on the ball, this is intense, this is really intense. And I managed to find a wonderful friend who I've known for 30 years who's recently had moved up to Brisbane to pick me up from the hospital. She's got 2 little kids, she was going to bring them. And I actually managed to find an ex-lover. See, ex-lovers can come in handy. I found an ex-lover who was willing to stay with me overnight, just totally platonic now, we're just friends now, and just watch me and check I was okay after the general anesthetic. He lives up in Brisbane. So I was very lucky because other people I contacted weren't available for various reasons because it was such short notice. It was really surreal. I checked into this Airbnb. The whole state was in lockdown that I was in. The streets were empty. This was the first lockdown, the first week of the first lockdown around the world. Nobody knew what was happening. You know, everywhere you went, people were wearing masks. When I went to the egg retrieval, you know, to take my temperature, I had to wear a mask, but it was the first time we'd done any of that. You know, it was right back at the beginning, so it was all very scary. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I've been so running around and stressed. I feel like I had a cold coming on. What if my temperature's too high and they won't let me do this egg retrieval and I'll waste this whole IVF cycle? It was quite stressful. So I go in, they put me under general anesthetic, they retrieve eggs. I come out of the general anesthetic, I'm all groggy. The doctor says, I've got 2 pieces of news for you. 1, we managed to get 4 eggs, which at the age of almost 47 is a miracle. And I was like, wow. And then he said, and while you were under general anesthetic, the Australian government cancelled all elective surgeries. This is the last egg retrieval I'll be doing. Because remember, it was a crazy first week of COVID. And I was just like, la 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 la, this whole IVF is blessed. Because I'm such a romantic, I think everything's magical. So I was like, this is blessed. And actually I left out one detail, that when I left the house to drive up to Brisbane with all my things and my food and packed to go to Airbnb, a rainbow had appeared over the house. So I'm thinking to myself, there's a rainbow, it's coming from my mother's spirit. I've driven up, I've just snuck in under the wire. So the doctor says to me, it's the last IVF I'll be able to do because they've just cancelled elective surgery. And I say to him, well, if this is a boy, I'm gonna call him Slider, because I just keep sliding in under the wire. It was pretty amazing. You weren't here then, but I'm telling you, it was pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. So my friend came and picked me up from the general anaesthetic with her little kids. It was beautiful. They came and stayed with me that day. Then my beautiful male friend came and stayed with me overnight. Totally platonic. He was very respectful. The next day I spent the whole day recovering from the surgery. Hit me quite hard. I was very tired. You know, I was coming out of an anaesthetic. Something really amazing actually happened on that day after the IVF surgery. Basically, I had had a history of chronic pain. I'd been living with it 21 years, 24/7. My whole body hurt. It was very extreme. And it's one of the reasons I had left it so late to try and have a baby. And it was one of the things that was really on my mind leading up to this IVF. How will I go through a pregnancy with chronic pain? Anyway, to cut a long story short, on the day of recovering from the IVF general anesthetic, I had a massive realization about what was causing my chronic pain. Something about going through a general anesthetic meant that I had a day without pain for the first time in 21 years, and it helped me to realize that my chronic pain was actually caused from neurological issues to do with my pain pathways in my brain, as opposed to being something physical happening in my body. That was a massive aha moment, life-changing moment. And from that day onwards, I started working with that issue as a neurological problem, not a physical problem, and I started getting help with that, and I actually reversed it. And it took me the next 12 months and I reversed it. And by the time I actually got pregnant with the donor egg with this baby, I didn't have chronic pain anymore. So I always attribute that day coming off the general anesthetic as being one of the most important days of my whole life. I couldn't possibly have known it. I didn't sign up for an IVF trying to solve my chronic pain. I will explain in other videos what I'm talking about and what the realization was and how I cured it, but it was an epic day. So when I look back, I think, okay, it didn't work, that IVF attempt, but I got a massive gift from it. I got a lot of gifts from it, actually. Okay, I'm gonna let this baby have a crawl around on the floor in front of me for a minute. You gonna never do play, play, play. So then, you know, they had retrieved these 4 eggs, and I'm staying in this Airbnb waiting to hear what happened with the eggs. So basically they retrieved 4 eggs, and then I had this very surreal few days where I was living in this Airbnb hotel in Brisbane. I was waiting every day to hear the news of the eggs. Did they manage to fertilize them? Had they survived? And they managed to fertilize 3 eggs. And then each day I was waiting to hear on, you know, the survival rate, and one of them had made it and the other one didn't. And in the end, we only had 1 viable embryo come out of this process. But in those few days, I remember just going for walks, because it was the first lockdown. There was empty streets. My friend who'd picked me up from the procedure, she came and went for walks with me sometimes I went by myself. And the whole thing was just super surreal. And then on the day when the embryo had developed enough to, when it was, I think, 5 days after it had been created, they said there was one healthy, good-looking embryo that had a good chance, and that they would put it into me in the embryo transfer. And I had booked an Airbnb. It was right next to the fertility clinic in the hospital. So when the day came for the embryo transfer, I had a small group of friends who knew what was happening. I texted them all. I said, please send me love at the moment of this embryo transfer. I want it to be a really beautiful, sacred moment. I go to the hospital, you know, they take my temperature, everyone's wearing masks, it's all very clinical. In the room of the embryo transfer, there was just like embryologists and clinicians, and they're all chit-chatting, and it was not sacred at all. And I'm lying there kind of almost like a pap smear with my legs spread open on this thing. And I said to the doctor, can you tell me when you're going to put the embryo in so I can have a moment of setting an intention? I'm really feeling it. He goes, oh, I've already done it. He'd already done it. The embryo was already inside me. I didn't even know. I thought he was just checking my bits, you know, like, ah! Anyway, the whole thing was hilarious. I drove home with a lot of hope. You know, I was in the 2-week wait. The 2-week wait. And in my next part of this video, I will tell you about the 2-week wait. See you in the next video. Oh my love.